Hi there, I'm Tim Irvine.
And I'm Stacy Irvine. Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast. We are really excited to welcome Jacquie Chapman back, founder of the Vallejo Leadership Group. And last time we talked about sustainable high performance. And Jacquie, you come by it honestly. You were a nationally ranked diver and downhill skier. You've created this incredible leadership company that helps individuals, organizations, and units within organizations to really be at their best, and you use the term thrive, which I know that for me really strikes a chord. I love that. You've got 25 years in management experience, which is weird because you must have been like 10 when you started that, if I'm doing the math right. You got an MBA from Ivy School at Western University. And I know with your organization, you've done these panel discussion events on some really, really amazing topics. And I've only been to one of them. I know, Stacey, you've been to, but you've got a lot of experience with it. Like, I know you come back from them really excited and jazzed up. So why don't you talk a little bit about them from your experience?
Sure. They are fabulous. I'm biased because I've been on two of the panels, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, those are really good ones.
However, I do think the one I enjoyed the most was the one I was just at, where I was not on the panel and I got to sit in the audience. And I can say this because, I was on the panel. I think the level keeps getting better with each one. And the other part I'm really excited about is we are very interested in this knowledge industry, and we think that there's such a need for it, because what we've always found in our industry is that the majority of the information out there is horrible. And we're always battling that, and we're always trying to send good messages out, and we're always trying to say things, everybody just calm down. This isn't going to happen. It's not the end of the world, if you do these things. But more and more media goes to these extremes and tries to send out these little sound bites that are very dramatic. And the more shocking they are, the more playtime they get. And I think there's people like the three of us, we really have to fight back against that. And it's very hard and exhausting. But it's important to do. What I love about your events is because they're in person, there's an energy that's really inspiring. And because you're so connected to these really interesting, cool people. That's what I found on the last one. For example, the guy who works in the military, I was blown away by him. So tell me what your thoughts are on this, and kind of how you've brought it all together and what your goals are. It's so exciting.
So the events for Vallejo Leadership are really an opportunity to shine a light on the people that I'm getting to meet and to collaborate with as a part of the business. So the very first one, and all of them actually, we've had 4 panelists. And the goal is to share the wisdom and insight that is actionable from various areas of expertise that individuals in the audience will actually be able to use walking out the door. We do them live because I think post-COVID, people are really craving connection. They're craving that energy that comes from being a part of a community.
Oh, and the food's good too.
And
the space. We forgot to mention that.
The space is amazing. Jen Nickel, the chef that I work with, is phenomenal. And she was the executive chef for Precision Nutrition for a number of years and worked with high-performing athletes. So she knows how to nourish people in a way that's actually super tasty too.
Yeah.
So the first event was me playing with the idea of what interests me right now, and what do I think would interest the people in my network. And I wanted to shine a light on the people that are collaborators in Vallejo Leadership so that more people would gravitate to those disciplines. So you were on the panel as the co-founder and co-leader of Totum. And so you talked about what's the role of exercise and nutrition in sustaining a healthy lifestyle. How do you go about addressing some of the trends like intermittent fasting or high intensity interval work? How do you think about that? And so I asked you questions, as I did with the other panelists, that are questions I hear frequently from my audience and from clients of ours at Vallejo Leadership. where there is a lot of noise out in the market.
Yes.
So we had the holistic nutritionist who's on the team at Vallejo, Heather Abbott, who talked about how much alcohol is the right amount of alcohol, which is a really contentious topic.
Tough topic to go through these days. Yeah,
it is.
We've had whole podcasts about it.
So that was the first. And then I had two of the other people from the Vallejo team, an executive coach, Lisa DeRocha, who talked about some of the topics that she addresses with her clients and how individuals can instill the practices in their mental and cognitive work to be at their very best. And then Kira Blessing, who is ex-McKinsey of 14 years and has a passion for leading leadership development out in nature. And so she talked about the role of nature in emotional and neurological regulation. She talked about how to integrate meditation into your life. So that was the first panel.
That was really cool. That the nature part, of course, I'm a huge fan of it. One other thing about those events that I really enjoyed is the questions that came were such good questions from the audience.
Yeah.
And how fun is that? Because we're not really prepared, but it's a great energy. And I found so many of the questions were very honest and people were sharing their stories. And to me, that's what it's all about, because the stories help everyone learn and they help all of us remember. And so that when we leave the event, we can be reminded, oh yeah, this person was struggling with that. And here's how, here's what the solution was. And I'm having that same struggle now. Here, I could try that, which I thought was really cool and fun too.
So in the spirit of learning, do you have a few of 5 top things that have come out of these events that you're like, oh, kind of like aha things that, wow, I hadn't really thought about it like that, or I hadn't even thought about that at all, and you've started to incorporate that either in your own personal practices or in your work with Vallejo leadership and working with individual clients?
So we've had 3 events. The first one, I took 2 really important points away, and it was actually one of the things came from Stacy, and this idea that you have a choice at every moment in your day to choose to either spiral up. So take something that you could catastrophize or drag out and have it be a negative event and have kind of a toxic effect on the rest of your day. Or you can choose to do something or have a mindset that allows you to learn from, take something positive away, create momentum and energy. And that's a choice. So spiral up, I feel like went viral after that very first
it's so funny. And that's
event.
It's our value, one of our totem values. We use it all the time.
And there's so many different ways that you can apply it. So the way I just used it is probably not how you guys would use it.
I love it.
And that's something that a lot of people have talked about, this idea of spiraling up. The idea of spending time in nature and being really intentional about being in nature is something I've really focused on since that event last November, and is something I talk to my clients a lot about. There's a lot of science behind the calming effect of being in nature, because there's asymmetry, and what that does to your neurological system is actually quite profound. So we talk about that in our coaching and in workshops at Vallejo. The second event was all about women's health and how, as a professional career woman, can you navigate through the hormonal shift of perimenopause and menopause effectively and as painlessly as possible. And my takeaway from that was a few things. Number one, you don't have to suffer, and there is help out there. So talk to your general practitioner, talk to potentially a naturopath if that's something that you have in your life, talk to your personal trainer about what you should be doing from a movement and nutrition perspective. But there's lots of ways to address the symptoms of perimenopause so that you are not crushed by brain fog, irritability, lack of energy, weight gain. And so to me, there was a message of hope there. And that was such a dynamic event with so much energy. And then the third event came again out of the question period in the first event, where somebody said, I have tried meditating. I want to meditate. I know it's good for me, and I just don't know how to actually make a habit of it. And I managed to get in touch with Jeff Warren, who is a meditation teacher and author, and has co-authored a book with Dan Harris from 10% Happier. And he lives here in Toronto. And through a little convincing, he was willing to come and do a panel. And so I built a panel around Jeff Warren and this idea of what can you do mentally to be at your very best. And Craig Weller was another person that we had on the panel, and he has a career in the Special Forces as a special warfare combatant craft crewman.
Crazy.
Which is a long name.
So good.
But he now runs a coaching practice where he trains special operators to get into the Navy SEAL program. So to go through the BUD selection process, which is unbelievably grueling. And Craig has written a book called Building the Elite, the same name as his company. And it is one of the most incredible tomes I've read about systems thinking and the integration between the mind and the body. And what jumped out at me in the book, and what also came out on the panel that I think people took away, and I certainly did, is the impact of your thoughts and which thoughts you decide to focus on and run with versus the ones that you say, that's not productive and I'm not going to pay attention to that one right now, or that's not helpful, is the difference between often success and failure. And Craig talks about being in the selection process for the special operations community. And they really do try to break you. And the people who make it through the selection process aren't necessarily the most physically fit people. It's the people who are able to deal with what we call in the corporate world imposter syndrome, this feeling of I'm not good enough, I don't belong. And the selection people try to make you feel like you aren't good enough and you don't belong. And they try to break you. And so the mental resolve that the successful candidates develop through the process, have developed prior to entering the selection process, is what allows them to succeed in that. And that's what they're trying to select for in the special operations community, so that you can perform under intense pressure out in a combat environment. And there are real learnings from that world back into the corporate world where you often feel like you're not good enough, like you don't deserve to be in the room that you're in, like you are one step away from getting fired. And being really intentional about developing the mindset and the mental fortitude to kind of lay down the neural pathways of what am I good at? Where is there evidence of success in my life? And so one of the habits I encourage many of my clients to do is two things. One, start a gratitude practice and focus on things that you're really grateful for in that day, not kind of globally. It needs to be very specific and timely. And then the second is, what are you proud of that you personally had agency over today? And writing 3 things down at the end of the day of what you're proud of is a way of kind of priming the pump for what's going well, what am I doing that's good, where am I having an impact? And having more of those thoughts allows you to continue that momentum of success and positivity.
Accentuate the positive. I remember Craig saying that. And I'm also thinking that I want to go train with Craig. I want to take a big group down. Wouldn't that be so fun?
Yes.
That we would go do some of this stuff, because you probably are like me, that being outside your regular environment, just being immersed in that and having someone push you mentally and have to train for it, I think it would be such a really interesting thing.
I couldn't agree more. I would love to do that. Let's make a plan.
Let's make a plan.
So back to this knowledge industry piece, and we are all, and I think that you've said it a couple of times, you're an expert in what you do, and we need to stay in our lanes from an expert standpoint. That we can't give advice to people that we're really not trained experts in it. This knowledge industry has a lot of opinions in it. And so I think anybody that's consuming, number one point is, if you want to evolve and get better at a thing, then consume really good quality information about that thing. And all you have to do, and we listen to that, I think the last time Jackie was on, you mentioned that podcast we listened to about the nutrition. Like, that's a great example of, okay, I picked up some nuggets in that. I'm going to adjust what I'm doing with this food or that food. And it's not like this wholesale change, but if you listen to really good quality nutrition podcasts once every 2 weeks for 6 months, I almost guarantee you that at the 6-month mark, you will have changed some habits easily because you've just like, okay, well, this just makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware, is this BS information that I'm taking in? What's the source? Where is it coming from? And I think that you had said this at one of the panels of Jackie's at your event, is when somebody answers a question definitively, like this is the answer to that, that's usually a warning sign that it's like, people that really know are like, well, it depends. And there's so many nuances to it. So I feel like that with the knowledge industry, you do have to get, it's a super powerful tool to help improve. And I think that your events are a great example of how to do it well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I see one of the roles of Vallejo leadership to be curating high quality, credible, scientifically validated information for a group of people who are not going to spend a lot of time researching optimal nutrition, optimal movement patterns, optimal sleep patterns, stress management, all those things. And so I take it upon myself and the team at Vallejo to make sure that we are really up to date on the research and the science behind any of the recommendations we're giving, always with the caveat that everything is likely requires personalization because we are all very different. And all of this continues to evolve as there's more research and science and clinical trials and testing. So right now, this is what we know to be true. And next week, it may look a little bit different.
That's such helpful, it's so helpful to have somebody curate things for us because we're all busy. The one thing, Tim probably doesn't know a lot about this, you had your colleague from Precision Nutrition talking about the impact of breath work. Can you explain that to Tim just briefly? Because I found that really powerful. And I also used it the next week because I was training a bunch of track and field athletes for OFSA was coming up. And I spent the time, I was treating them too. I spent the time to say, you got to breathe. You've got to learn this breathing and you have to do this. And so let Tim and our listeners know about what his experience was, because I found that fascinating.
So Tim Jones is the CEO of Precision Nutrition. He's in his late 40s now. He was a varsity athlete at Western 25 years ago. And he's had a very successful career as a leader for many years and is the CEO of Precision Nutrition for, I think, 8 years now. He's got a really stressful life. It's been a tough go for the last number of years. He's also realized that he has elevated cholesterol, like very elevated cholesterol, despite having a diet that is very dialed in, an exercise pattern that is, by all definitions, exceptional. But he wanted to try and address his high cholesterol without using a statin. And so he started a program with Rapid Health Optimization in the US. And they took him through a 2-year program, which entailed lots of different dimensions. But the one that stood out to Tim the most was the focus on stress management. So Tim is a data nerd. He wears an Oura ring, and Rapid Health Optimization actually connected him to some more sophisticated technology to understand his heart rate variability, his heart rate, his parasympathetic nervous system tone. And through a number of different data points, he realized that he didn't think he was stressed or, what was the word he used? Tense. And yet he had a number of coaches across a bunch of different disciplines make comments about the fact that he needed to relax. And so when you hear it enough times, you eventually decide that there's something to be done about it. And so he has ADHD. He had tried meditating, hadn't really had any traction with it. But the one thing that did work for him was really short bursts of breath work. And in the Oura app, there is a breath work section that has 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, all sorts of variations of length, but short. And Tim started integrating those into very strategic parts of the day, always before bedtime so that he could downregulate his nervous system, But what he realized from the data was that situations where he thought he was not at all stressed, the heart rate variability, heart rate and temperature data actually indicated that his stress levels were quite elevated through strategy sessions with his team, presenting in front of a number of people, having a conversation that may have gotten heated with a partner. And so he was very strategic about implementing 5-minute breathwork sessions multiple times throughout the day, and found his health markers improved dramatically. And he would say that that was the X factor. Now, he did a whole bunch of different things as a part of this program, but he managed to cut his cholesterol in half. He went from 16 and change % body fat to 10% body fat.
Amazing.
And he has never felt better in his life. And he would say that the stress management piece was the biggest change that he made.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's a legend, because we have it. We're all talking about. We need to have Tim on as well, so he can go through some of these details. That was fascinating to me.
And to think that you are not stressed, and then the data is showing that you are stressed, right? Like that. That's the difference maker for someone like that. Like, I know what I feel like. I'm very in tune with my body. I'm not stressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and hadn't he done a bunch of those tests too, like Myers-Briggs? Like he said he had a whole room full of all these psychological tests that said the opposite, that said he was calm, that said he was managing everything well. And until he started looking at these markers, then and heart rate variability during the day, and that's when he started to realize, okay.
So it's an unconscious thing. It's kind of like, well, I go to sleep and I sleep well. Well, you don't actually know if you sleep well until you look at the data of your sleep. Like, you might be missing too much REM or too much deep sleep or not. And so if that's the case, then, well, how do you deal with that? Just because you turn the lights off at this time and turn them back on at this time does not necessarily mean you've had a great sleep. You need some information to back it up. That's really fascinating. I like that idea of using some of that through the day, because I would guess that I probably, my common thing to Stacy is, I'm not stressed.
Yes,
she knows when I'm stressed.
True.
And
Our team would be the same though. And it was funny, Tim said his team was the same. Everyone at work said, you're calm, you're not stressed. And you would get the exact same thing here. I would get the opposite, to note that.
As would I. And I know when I'm stressed.
Because I'm more emotional. And I lead with emotion. And Tim leads with non-emotion, which is perceived as
calm. Is not non-emotion.
Yeah, but it's perceived that
People
way.
really like me. I really like them.
I really like you.
Sure they do.
Thanks, Jacquie.
Sure they do. I thought that was fantastic about that press. I loved everything about that presentation. And I do really want to have Tim come on and delve into this a little bit deeper. We are starting a new assessment system here at Totum, where we're going to be going into some of these variables a little deeper. And there's all this new technology out for blood work. We just did a test where we mailed our blood work away, and it's going to look at our hormones and a bunch of different panels that are hard to get here. And we are going to book on a DEXA scanner. We're going to go through that. We're doing some more metabolic testing here. We're doing some force plate testing. I think that the information becoming available is getting more and more exciting and also scientific, which is lovely. So now we're not just getting information. It's good information. It's about what's happening inside, as opposed to going to your GP for your general physical, getting a general blood analysis done that only tells you you're within the normal range. Doesn't tell you optimal. It just tells you you're within the normal range. And you've been wearing the Aura ring. Are you still wearing it?
I
Still wear it.
I used to wear it only at nighttime until they started to come out with data about daytime stress. And so now I wear it all the time. And I look at the data. And I'm sure my heart rate is elevated now. My heart rate variability is probably lower. But this is good stress.
Absolutely. It's excitement.
It is. And there's this misconception, I think, out in the world that all stress is bad stress. And certainly chronic elevated stress for a long period of time is not great for your system. But during periods of stress is when you learn, you evolve, you develop. And so we all need stress, and this kind of stress. And it's the same thing when you're working out. You stress your system. As long as you're integrating in the right kind of recovery, then you can ultimately improve your performance over time. It's when you're not implementing the right recovery where you end up burning out. But back to your point about Tim and data. So he made a really good point about if you're going to set goals and you want to try and take some interventions in your life and make changes, establish what the baseline is with data. And so you bringing in a DEXA scan, maybe doing VO2 max testing, establishing a baseline, and then from there, figuring out where you're getting to and what interventions actually are working by looking at the data, as opposed to taking a stab in the dark at something you think might be working. Have something that you can track so that you can see if you're making progress and the things that you're spending the time and intention on are actually yielding the results that you want them to.
I love that. We have a saying in our industry, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. And that's what that's about.
I made that up.
He did not. He did not.
I did too.
Absolutely not. Okay, whatever. To that point, we do need to get good assessment. And I do think it's getting really exciting. The one thing that I love in our industry that I've noticed is that people are coming in with goals that are so much better than they used to be. 5 years ago, when I would do the assessment, it was, I want to lose weight. I want to lose belly fat. I want to, and then I even had women like pointing to parts of their body and saying like, this needs to get better. This needs to get toned. And it was all about that. I have not had that, I'm happy to say. And our clientele is of that highly educated, that kind of more of a mindset like that. I'm getting from the women, I want more muscle mass. I care about my bone density. I care about my energy levels. I want to be able to perform better. I'm running this race. I'm doing this thing. And how exciting is that, that messaging is getting out. Now, we are preaching to the choir here 100%. But I do think like down the road, if we just keep working at it, and if this knowledge industry keeps going the way it's going, I really hope that we're getting those good messages up, because you know from the changes that you've made, and we know from the changes that we've made, that little things can make your life so much better. And just sometimes it's the patterning of how you do something, when you eat lunch, what you're choosing for lunch, little simple things. Like we don't feel like we're missing out on much, maybe the alcohol a little bit. But we're not feeling like, oh my God, my life sucks so much. I can't eat this. I can't. It's great. And the energy, the payoff is so worth it.
I think you made a really good point there, that it's the little changes. And so the whole field of behavior change, I feel like, has exploded in the last number of years, with BJ Fogg out of Stanford and James Clear writing Atomic Habits. There's been some really good books that talk about the key components of behavior change. But what is clear across all of them is you need to start really small, celebrate the success, and make sure that you've got consistency. And I'm sure you would see that with your clients here. And from an executive coaching and a leadership development perspective, often people get super keen on changing everything, seeing the potential, having the optimism and the hope about this new them. And in order to make progress that's sustainable and have sustainable high performance, you need to make small incremental changes and stick to them. The ones that work for you. So measure them so that you know what's actually working, and make the small incremental changes. Don't try and change everything all at once.
And then celebrate the positives.
And celebrate the positives.
The work that you're doing with the clients that you have in your office, I think it's right down that pathway. Great information applied at an appropriate pace so that adaptations can occur. And we don't have to be in a hurry for all this. You're not going to build a house in a day. You just need to, small steps will get you to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So, great. Thanks for joining us again, Jacquie. Awesome to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thanks for listening to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on Apple, Google, or Spotify and leave a 5-star review and comment. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, and please spread the word to family and friends.